Hogwarts Era of Darkness by Corty. Chapter 1. Conrad Anguin. It was a weird dream. I was lost in a dark forest. The sky was black and starless, yet the full moon was shining up there in solidarity. I was being chased by a snake, or at least, I think it was a snake. I heard it slither behind me, under the bushes, around the thick black-barked trees. I was trying to run away from it and get as far as possible, yet its sound and hiss always came from behind me, no matter what I did or where I tried to hide. When I finally stopped giving up, it laughed and asked in a high-pitched voice if playtime was over already. Yet before I could see where it was, I woke up. Blinking my eyes and looking around, I was back in my bedroom. I was sitting on the massive, solid wood baldachin bed under a soft, white blanket. I tried regulating my breath as best as possible. It would be shameful for the heir to the Anguine family to show such an unsightly expression right after waking up. But "That is even worse," I murmured, watching the wet stains on my sheet. No, it wasn't pee. It was sweat. Although I bet I could not explain it to anyone if they discovered it. I climbed out of bed and felt my deep, violet-coloured silk pyjamas stick to my body like a wetsuit. It was a horrible feeling. Fumbling in the dark, I was cursing under my breath as there was no electricity in our home, and I couldn't flick up a switch to bring light into the darkness. Why would there be? As a family of pure-blood wizards, all we needed was magic. The Muggles' inventions were nothing but weaknesses, their pitiful attempt in mimicking magic. At least, that is what my mother always says. Good for her. I am still only 11. I haven't got my wand yet. How should I perform magic then? Well, it did not matter, as my solution came with a crack. Literally. "Master?" a squeaky voice called out, as my personal house elf appeared out of nowhere. "Squeaky, light please," I said, expecting her to appear as soon as I was up. She always did. Even in the dark, I could see the grey clothes on her that resembled a sack that she found somewhere, cutting holes in it for her limbs to wear as a dress. Her floppy, long ears and blue giant eyes occupied most of her face. "Master had an accident," she murmured after snapping her fingers and summoning a small ball of light above her head. I just stared at her, hearing her words that could be the last nails in my reputation's coffin if uttered outside my bedroom. "Doesn't matter. Clean it up, please," I moaned, starting to undress and wipe myself before dressing up in my regular clothes consisting of a black shirt, deep purple vest, and black pants. What would I give to have some colour in my life? I added under my breath as my family's colours, black and royal violet, were all that defined my wardrobe's variety. Sometimes, a little gold sprinkled in, here and there, but not much, only on my formal clothes. "Done, master," Squeaky said, already having dry and clean sheets on my bed and in the middle of fixing my pillows. "Thanks," I answered, looking at the clock in the corner of my room. It was dully showing that it was barely past 5 in the morning. The sun should slowly start rising up, and I was in no mood to go back to sleep. I have had the same nightmare since my coming of age a few months ago, right after my acceptance letter came and I could call myself a student of Hogwarts. "Is anyone up yet?" "Yes, Master." She nodded. "Master's father is in his study." "Mm-hmm." I nodded, deciding I may go and see him before anyone else also woke up. All my belongings should be already packed, and the last thing I would need to get was my own wand before heading off to school. "Ready my usual breakfast," I said, walking out of my room, and Squeaky nodded hurriedly, rushing out and heading straight to the kitchen. Curious beings house elves are. They have their own magic, casting it without wands or incantations, yet in complete servitude to us, Wizards and witches. I never understood it. If I could cast magic so well without any wand, I would never serve nor bow to another. But I wasn't like that. So I had to bow my head. Just thinking about it made me sigh while I found myself before my father's study and its dark oak, double-sided door. I was watching the carving of a snake on it, making me remember my nightmare from a moment ago. No. Different. I thought as this snake was familiar. A purple-coloured viper with spiky scales on its head and around its eyes. Whatever is chasing me in my dream is different. Is it even a snake? I can't tell. Shaking my head and straightening out my thoughts, I knocked. When meeting father, it is best to have a collected look. He greatly dislikes pointless ramblings and blabbering, but it always seemed I was an exemption for that. Lucky, but I was not about to push my luck too far. "Come in," echoed his deep voice, signalling me to push open the door and step in, greeting him courteously. "Father," I said, bowing with a hand placed on my chest. Many visitors often said I was the spitting image of my father from when he was young. I could never imagine that, to be honest. He was in his mid-50s now, not that old for a wizard, but tell that to his outward appearance, to his greying hair which was quickly receding, starting from the top of his head of all places. I hope that is something I did not inherit, or that there is magic I can use to prevent it. Gone was his dark violet hair colour, which I inherited too. So I am afraid I will go balding just like him a few decades later. Well, at least his eyes are full of vigour, similarly purplish in colour, just as mine. "Can't sleep?" he asked, letting himself smile a little, closing the thick book he had in his hand and placing it on the huge mahogany table before him, where dozens of candles were burning without any drop of wax falling down from them. "Yes, father," I answered, and it wasn't a lie. Not really. "I know the feeling." He chuckled, beckoning me closer, slapping my shoulders with his rough hands, scarred from many duels, almost making me buckle under his raw strength. Or was I just weak? Well, I wasn't that tall or muscular. I wasn't skinny per se, but very close. "I couldn't sleep at all on the day I was going to get my wand. Oh, the excitement. When the sun is up, I'll take you to Ollivander after breakfast. Choosing a wand is not to be rushed, so I booked the whole shop for you. You can browse to your heart's content." "I bet some will not be happy about that," I joked, making my father chuckle. "Too bad. They shouldn't have left buying their wands to the last day of the summer." As he was saying that, he picked out his own wand. It was made out of yew, looking as if small branches were spiralling together, while its handle was fitted with a dark, violet-coloured grip, ending in a viper's head at the bottom. I watched as he swished it, summoning a pot of coffee from the kitchen and letting it pour itself out while he continued talking to me. If they have a problem, they would best go and complain about it at the ministry. "Sure." I nodded. "I bet anyone would dare to say that the head of the Muggle-born registration did something they found unfair," I added, rolling my eyes, something that I would not dare to do when speaking to my mother. Then worry if some relatives of theirs turn out to be Muggle-born, or someone in their family was back in the day. Then they get obliviated into the day after tomorrow, stripped of their magic and thrown into the Muggle world without a clue who they are. Well, that would be the humane outcome, he answered me, maintaining his smile while sipping his coffee. Better than being sent to be part of the Lord's experiment, ... mentioning. His title made me shiver involuntarily. It did not escape my father's eyes, but he did not bring it up, mainly because it was the same for him. His title was enough to send shivers through anyone. Spelling out his name? That was punishable by law, so nobody even dared to try it. Many only believed him to exist because the tales were still strong about how he came to power, how he defeated everyone in his way, leaving none alive. Well, as someone from the Anguin family, a pure-blood wizarding dynasty, I was privy to more detailed information. He wasn't able to kill everyone, not yet, at least. Through my father and my mother, thanks to her usually obstinate, loud voice, I knew that many powerful wizards were still in hiding, continuing guerrilla warfare against him and the ministry. For many, the terrorist organization, known as the Order of the Phoenix, was long gone, its leader Dumbledore dead. But the reality was different. They were still active, and the latter was very much alive. Believe me. I know because he killed my uncle last year when he and other Death Eaters ambushed their previous hideout. It wasn't a soul that I would miss, mind you. He was a bastard. A male version of my mother, so to speak. Being brother and sister does that, I assume. I never voiced this to anyone, of course, not even to my father. Although he may agree with me, he would only do so behind closed doors and when nobody else was home. My mother's family, the Arcania bloodline, was just as old as ours. The only difference, they had been mingling with muggles for centuries. Now, after he overtook, naming himself the new Minister of Magic, the Arcanias were doing everything to climb back to the ranks of nobles. All those who belong to her family, those who can still say they are half-bloods, were doing all in their might to wiggle themselves into families like my father's, who maintained their purity. Whatever purity means. A line I would never dare to utter, out loud. "What is the grimace for?" Father asked. Evidently, my face betrayed me, displaying my thoughts without my consent. "Nothing." "Thought about your mother?" He smirked, knowing me too well. "Conrad, don't let your thoughts betray you. You are my son. Learn to display what others want to see, not what you really think. That could land you in hot water." "Or worse," I added, turning his smirk into a proud smile. "Exactly." He beamed at me while I let out an inaudible sigh. This is what I did not like. Bowing our heads. I know Father had his own pride, just like now, but many times he pretended that he had discarded it a long time ago. Well, I couldn't really blame him. Some pure wizarding families also refused to bow and were now nothing but fertilizers on some fields in the countryside. What was their name? Weasleys? "Come, I assume you sent Squeaky to the kitchen," Father said, returning my thoughts to the present and interrupting my sudden daydreaming. "Yeah," I nodded quickly. "Good. Let's go down. I am also hungry. After that we can go out, have a son and father morning, or something." I looked at the clock on the wall behind my father. "At what?" "6 in the morning." "Why not?" He laughed, patting me on my back as he pushed me out of the study. And I could not help but smile. Whatever Father was in others' eyes, I knew one thing for sure. I wanted to make him proud of me. Chapter 2. Wand Choosing. Stepping out from the green flames, I quickly readjusted myself, looking back and watching my father appear from the fireplace. I never could truly get used to traveling by the Flu network. It made me a bit dizzy every time. Not as dizzy as using a portkey, mind you. That one I truly hate. "You look as if you just inhaled a handful of ash, son." Father laughed, slapping my back, knowing my thoughts full well. "You can't go everywhere by broomstick." "I thought about apparating, mind you," I replied indignantly. "Did you now?" He smirked at me, and I knew that tone very well, as I used it frequently when dealing with one of my younger cousins. "Getting your wand and already aiming to learn apparition? Well, 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 go for it." "Ugh. Father, you know full well I don't know how." I answered, giving up as it was impossible to win against him. He was my father after all. No, I am serious, he continued, and I felt his hand squeeze my left shoulder. You are young, but if you think you can master it, go for it. Hogwarts only teach it when you get older, but if you manage to sneak into the restricted part of the library and… Are you telling your only son to break the rules and do something bad? I asked back in a more hushed voice, raising an eyebrow at him. Rules are there for those who can't think for themselves. Ah, I smiled. It was a family motto. Kinda. I don't know where it came from, but Father loved to repeat it to me. Yet when I got myself into trouble and quoted him, somehow it never counted. Figures. Well, whatever. It is not like I would try to do something to get myself into trouble while at school. Well, let me clarify that. I would not get caught when breaking a rule. I'm not in the mood to experience the punishment that is dished out in there. Here we are, Father said, stopping right before Ollivander's shop. I was so spaced out I did not even realize we arrived. Maybe it was because it was still early in the morning and people were just coming about. I wanted to say something, but then a monotone, cold voice made me halt my tongue. Angus! I looked towards the source as to who would call my father by his first name so casually, and then I saw him, the current headmaster of Hogwarts, Severus Snape. I knew not much about him, only what Father told me when I first met him 6 or 7 years ago. He was his most loyal supporter, or one of them. No wonder he was made headmaster at Hogwarts after Dumbledore was chased out. Thinking about that, I also remembered what my father said to me then. People can be deceitful. This will take some time, Father said to me, nodding towards Ollivander's shop. Go, take your time. When finished, wait for me here. Got it? Sure. I nodded, glancing at the icy, bland look on my future headmaster's face before turning away, reaching to the door handle. Yet I could still feel his cold gaze on my back. Was he hostile to our family? I hope not. Even though my father is a minister and a Death Eater, he is not in the inner circle like him. All things considered, the headmaster of Hogwarts outranks my father by a large margin. Ah, welcome. An old, calm, but a bit shaky voice greeted me as I entered, leaving my father and my previous thoughts on the outside. Purple hair and eyes. You must be from the Anguin bloodline, he said, watching me with those silvery, ancient-looking eyes of his. Yes, I answered politely and tried to sound as firm as possible, trying to hide that his look was somewhat creeping me out. I knew he had to expect my arrival, as my father booked the whole store. But still, his look and voice made me forget all of that. My name is Conrad Anguin. He nodded. I remember the wand I sold to your father, Angus Anguin. He continued in a low, whisper-like voice. Made out of yew with dragon heartstring, a perfect match for his skills in dueling, as I heard. I could only nod my head in answer, amazed by his words. Father did say that he was a master craftsman and wandmaker, but now I think I understand what he meant. There was something in his voice, something that I could only describe as magic. Try this, he said, picking out a slim box from the hundreds that decorated his small shop's walls. Looking into it, I recognized the wood it was made from. Reed. I also remembered its brief description and couldn't help myself from reciting it. Best suited to those who are bold and eloquent. Mr. Ollivander is flattering me. I smiled, picking it out while he remained silent and just shook his head. No. I knew immediately that it was not his answer to my little joke, as I also felt nothing. It is said that the wand chooses its master, and holding it in my hand, I felt just the same as when my hands were empty. Does this mean I wasn't eloquent enough? Well, here. He pulled out another box while I put back the previous wand into its place and looked at the next contender. I did not recognize this one. Picking it out, I did feel a prickling sensation, gave it a wish, and managed to engulf its holding box in flames. No, Mr. Ollivander said, extinguishing the flames and taking it back, ignoring my embarrassed expression and failure even to say, sorry. Sadly, my next dozen attempts at getting my own wand ended in failure. Then another 12 were a no-go, and another. Honestly, I was starting to doubt my own talents. I am long past the phase where I was angry or on the verge of tears. I just wanted a wand. Whichever it may be. I don't care about its core, nor its wood, length, whatever. Just give me my wand, please. Mr. Ollivander hummed, remaining calm and collected, wishing his own magical instrument, cleaning up the mess and returning all my tryouts to their neat little boxes and places. Am I doomed to learn wandless magic? I asked, and my voice had to be just as crestfallen as my expression. Some tribes in Africa pursue that. It is an option. Great, I groaned, not really fond of the idea. Let's try this, he continued in a much more livelier voice than before. It sounded to me as if he just thought of something and wanted to experiment with it, me being the unfortunate soul who will have to withstand its results. What he brought back was a particular-looking wand, and for the first time he started explaining it to me. It was bright, light brown in colour, smooth from top to bottom, with a curved handle that looked to fit into the palm nicely. It is made from cypress, a wood for nobility, and I do not simply mean wealth or rank in society. Mr. Ollivander explained, making my brows furrow. I was nobility, simply by my bloodline. I see, I added, but I was hesitant to hold it. If another rejects me, I think I would simply resign and tell my father to announce that I died of illness or something. I didn't want to face anybody and explain that there was no wand in Mr. Ollivander's shop that could fit me. It has a unique core. Not from my usual choices, he continued, looking at the wand and then at my slightly trembling fingers. It has a horned serpent horn as its core. When its owner is in danger, it emits a low, musical tone that only the wielder can hear. Also, knowing your bloodline. He looked at me but said no more, and I was not about to ask him. Not if he did not want to say it. Never heard of it, I blurted out, not even thinking about it. My mind was already stretched thin, so I simply went for it. Grabbing a hold of the hilt of the wand, I felt it, a rush of energy, something bursting out from it, washing through my body, filling me with an unknown but truly pleasant sensation. 10-inch long, highly flexible. He smiled, watching my expression of amazement as I let the feeling of magic wash over me. I think we found it, Mr. Anguin. Yes, I agree. I nodded with relief, washing over me. I couldn't help but let my lips part into a wide grin, going from ear to ear that I was still maintaining when I exited the shop and was met with Father waiting there for me. Ha! See? I knew I had to book the shop. It is already past noon. Wait! Is it? I gasped, looking around, finding a clock in one of the shop's windows, seeing he wasn't joking. Doesn't matter. The fact you took so long means you got something unique. Yes, I answered, proudly showing it to him and explaining everything that Mr. Ollivander told me about it, watching his smile grow just as wide as mine. I bet we looked like two simpletons in the middle of the street, but I didn't care. I had my own wand, and by looking at my father, I knew I made him proud. That was just as great as the feeling of holding my wand in my hands. Chapter 3. Departure. The next day, waking up, my first thing to do was to hold my wand, examining it once more, making a few swishes in the air before climbing out of bed to get dressed. Squeaky was already there, my clothes prepared, my trunk packed, ready to leave at a moment's notice. Master looks good with wand in hand. Master will become a powerful wizard. Squeaky is sure about it. Thank you, Squeaky. Will you be okay while I'm gone? I asked, knowing that with me gone she would have to attend to my mother. Squeaky is a good house elf. I don't doubt that, I replied, not asking any more, seeing the look in her eyes. Walking down to the lobby of our manor, I came face to face with the one person I wasn't keen on seeing. My mother, Isolde Arcania. Good morning. I greeted her with courtesy, and she returned with a nod, but ignored me, walking past me and heading up the staircase, seemingly going towards my father's study. Good. At least I did not have to start making small talk. Whenever we had to do that, it somehow always turned into her shouting and me leaving the room. I just hated being talked down to, and arguing with a brick wall is as pointless as trying to make a troll learn ballet. I know she was forced to marry my father by her family. I would be pissed if I had to marry someone I do not like. But she never complained when she was allowed to spend my father's money, when she could have her own house elf, when she could enjoy the flattering of others. I can't remember if she ever took care of me. Maybe when I was really little? But my memories don't go that far back. To me, she can only demand things, but never give something back for it. I can't fathom why father tolerates her even when he knows she is cheating on him. Because I told him. But he just laughed, telling me not to worry about small things and ignore her. How could I when she is representing our family's name? If that gets out... Master, your face looks horrible. Is it because of the lack of sleep? Squeaky said, jolting me out of my thoughts, making me look into the mirror on the opposing wall as I was standing, unmoving at the bottom of the stairs. In Squeaky's way, she was dragging along my trunk, making sure everything was ready for leaving the house an hour later. Squeaky told you that you should rest. Yes, you did. I forced a smile onto my face, ignoring the troubling thoughts and wiping off the dark look from my face. By the time I finished my breakfast, father also came in, dressed up and stretching, followed by my mother, also in a pretty dress. Her black hair was tied up in a bun, and her silver-coloured eyes were even more eye-catching with the makeup she put on. Her black and violet dress was made from the finest materials a wizard could buy. Yet her face looked as if she just took a bite from a lemon. Well, too bad. Now she surely had to accompany me and my father to the station. We had to keep up a certain appearance. Are you excited? Father asked, patting my shoulders as I stood up. I would lie if I said no. Yep, you would. He grinned, fixing my clothes, which was unnecessary, as on the train. I would have to change anyway. When we left the manor, a luxurious deep blue Bentley Arnage was waiting for us, courtesy of my father's arrangements. Do we really have to? My mother asked when the driver stepped out, opening the door for her. We are going through places where muggles live and rule. The station is swarming with them this time of year, so yes, we have to. Father answered her calmly, like explaining something to a kid. I always found it funny, and I couldn't help but smile while climbing in. He usually treated me more like an adult than my mother, who was more like a whining little girl, especially when she threw tantrums, the one that was slowly brewing inside of her. I could see it. Throughout the way to King's Cross, she was bringing it up again and again. Why did she have to come? Everything was a problem. The car was uncomfortable. It was hot. It was cold. She did not want to walk amidst muggles. Then the weather was bad again, as soon as the sun went behind a small, white cloud. And it was going on, and on, and on. Looking at Father, I simply couldn't understand how he managed to ignore her so well and just smile, enjoying the changing scenery and watching the muggles' different cars go past by as we entered London. I rarely see my father angry or raise his voice. Even when I made some minor troubles for him when I was younger, he never shouted at me. He always listened to what I had to say and punished me accordingly. Even if I protested deep down, I knew when I deserved it. My mother? Well, taking a glance at her, seeing how her face was already a shade of red, her voice sounding like the car's windows would shatter soon enough. That was enough for me to know what kind of man I didn't want to be when I grew up. It was horrible to listen to, and she was getting louder and louder as if that would achieve anything. It just made my father ignore her even more. Will she ever learn that it is useless? I guess not. I just hope, when in school, I won't show my mother's skills in comprehension. Mastering spells and learning things. Oh, I hope it goes well. Walking through the streets and crowd was somewhat of a new experience, and I quite liked it. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't that used to being looked at by so many people as they watched us get out of the expensive-looking car. Although I think they would think I'm some kind of freak if I told them it was the most inconvenient way of travel. Like, ever. By the end, I felt myself getting nauseous. I don't know if it was the car or my mother's constant, loud complaining, but I was glad to be out of that box of uncomfortable mess finally. In the end, my mother only shut up because Father looked at her with a glint in his eyes, making her behave at once. I never knew how he does that, but I do hope they will teach it at school. Walking in, I had to admit, I really like the way muggles build things. It was pleasing to the eye. The fact that they achieve it without using any magic is also fascinating. I wonder what else they may invented that we could also make use of. Although those kinds of thoughts were never spoken out loudly, my father made sure I remembered that. Arriving at the designated station, I saw some of our kind passing through the barrier, hidden in plain sight from the muggles. I was familiar with it, doing similar things when once in a while I was going out with Father when he let me come along, watching him work and check upon people who were obliviated of our presence, making sure they did not recover their memories. It always struck me odd to do that. It shouldn't be possible. But I saw Father sometimes cast a spell, saying it is for reinforcement of the previous one. Well, I know no real spells yet, only the theories behind some. Once again, before starting to fall into a spiraling thought process and jumping from idea to idea, a loud whistle dragged me back to reality. "Whoa!" I exclaimed, making my father laugh. "Beautiful, eh?" He laughed as we watched the red steam engine standing there, billowing out white smoke while witches and wizards were saying goodbyes to their families and boarding the train. "You told me about it, but seeing it is a different experience." I nodded, while ignoring my mother's sour face, appearing behind us. "Listen." Father looked at me while we started walking, getting out of the way to head towards the back of the train, where I could get on and find myself an empty cabin. "School won't be easy. Keep yourself out of trouble and obey the rules. Breaking some of them is fine. But if you get caught, my name won't save you." "I wouldn't rely on that, Father," I answered honestly. "I'm not like others," I added, stealing a quick glance over my shoulder. I know. If you ever find yourself in trouble, go to your house's teacher or to the headmaster. To the headmaster? I asked, letting my surprise show before reining it in, reforming the indifferent look that I used to put up. As Father always said, you don't know when someone is watching. Always keep your thoughts to yourself and ensure only those you truly trust know about them. Yes, he repeated. Don't ask more. Just remember this. Trust him, no matter how much you may start to dislike him. Okay? That is weird. I smiled, which I bet looked weird too. Son? He asked, and his voice was oddly serious, making me nod. Good. Now, he chuckled, patting my back and seeing that my trunk was already up on the train, waiting for me. Good luck, and make me proud. Heh heh. I will, I said, laughing with him and giving him a hug before boarding the train. I was still watching him from the window inside until the steam engine whistled loudly and the doors closed by themselves. I watched as the platform, along with my grinning father and sulking mother, was gone, and I held onto my trunk's handle and started to look for a cabin that was empty. And I could have it all for myself. Chapter 4. The Four Houses. Walking down the carriage, dragging my trunk behind me, I passed some already full cabins and looking at them, they were also first-year students. I vaguely recognized some of their features, be it by their hair colors or eyes, telling signs of pure-blood families or, at least, half-bloods. As I was walking along, looking into one compartment, my eyes met with someone who I totally forgot would also be present. Watching those light grey eyes, filled with pride and a false sense of authority, made me audibly sigh as I went forward, ignoring him completely. I was not in the mood for it. Sadly, the owner of those eyes thought differently, opening the compartment door and looking out after me. Not even saying hi, Anguin. Or is your family suddenly outranking mine? I was not about to interrupt the important discussion that the son of the Minister of Improper Use of Magic. I replied plainly, not even looking back, and continuing my way. My apologies, Mr. Malfoy, I added, just before he could say something back. I was not about to indulge in his fantasies. True, his father, on paper, outranked mine in power and authority, but that did not mean we would take everything like a punching bag. Although father usually avoided arguments with the slimy head of the Malfoys, when they became too pushy, he wasn't afraid to bring the matters before his attention. That usually shuts them up pretty quickly. He had no mood or time to deal with squabbles between his subordinates, father always told me. There were bigger issues at hand. Whatever that meant. So, following father's advice, I adopted the same method, dealing with Draco Malfoy whenever we met. Ignore him politely and satisfy his ego. Then he will fall silent like a well-fed baby. I was glad that he was behind me and couldn't see the small smirk forming on my face, imagining him wearing a diaper and waving a rattle to amuse himself. Oh! I stopped, finally finding an empty cabin. I leisurely opened, pulled my trunk in, placed it down, and with a loud moan I sat down, looking out the window, watching the changing scenery. It very quickly let me forget my brief run-in with Draco, although I was afraid I would have to meet him more regularly than I wanted. Maybe we will be sorted into different houses. Surprisingly, a voice answered my question that wasn't supposed to be answered. You already have an idea where you will end up? Looking towards its source, a girl was standing at the door. She was around my height, with long braided brown hair, brown eyes, and wearing elegant black and gold clothing. It wasn't hard to guess by her features which family she belonged to. A rough one, I said, smiling a little, looking behind her, seeing her fair hand hold onto her trunk. "You can come in if you want." "Thanks." She nodded in response, finally sitting down opposite of me, looking at my hair, clearly deducing my own background as I did with hers. "Conrad Anguin." I nodded, and she quickly answered with her own name. "Quincy Black." "Thought so. There is only one remaining child in the Black family, and that is Regulus Black's daughter. Oh, how one of the most ancient and purest bloodlines fell." Noticing the change in her expression, I quickly tried to hide my thought from showing up on my face. It was widely known that the current sons of the Black family, both of them turned traitors and were wanted as terrorists. Sirius did it first, way back in the days when he was still a student at Hogwarts. He is still one of their strongest assets to this day. Then there is his younger brother, Regulus. Father told me that he was a Death Eater, joining in young, but after he was assigned a task, he failed it and turned traitor, joining his elder brother. As to what that task was, not even Father knew. The fact that both brothers abandoned their families brought shame to the Blacks, so much so that they were now looked upon with contempt and suspicious eyes, even by those who were related to them. Although that was true for almost all the other families. Everyone has a little black in themselves, my father used to tell me jokingly. Quincy before me was still a baby when that happened, and I don't know if she was left behind or her father was unable to take her away. But the fact remained. She was now the last of the Blacks. By now her brows were furrowed even more. I bet she thought, after telling her name, my silence was a signal of my contempt towards her or her family. "Sorry," I replied, smiling. "I tend to space out from time to time." "Oh," she answered, not really believing me, still maintaining a frown. "Do you also have a feeling where you will end up?" I asked, ignoring her now wary looks. The best way to deal with that was to strike up a casual conversation. I truly did not mind that she was from the Black family. Even if others may look down on her, I knew full well how that felt. Our family was also looked upon differently. Like, for example, as others would look upon the Malfoys, mainly because my father was a long-time Death Eater, yet seemingly not in the inner circle of his, not to mention we were designated as purifiers and made to interbreed with those families that let Muggle-born blood seep into them. "I have," Quincy answered me in the meanwhile, "and I hope it will be the Slytherins, or I don't know if I will be allowed to wear my family's name anymore. What about you?" "Well, my family's crest bears the image of a viper, so you can guess." I chuckled, but then added, "But my father wouldn't really care which house I am going to be sorted into." "What about you? Do you care?" she asked, watching my eyes, and I felt like she was trying to read me. Maintaining such intensive eye contact was a bit uncomfortable, but I was not about to lose. "I do," I answered, crossing my legs, leaning back in my seat, and blinking my eyelids slowly before answering, mimicking how my father dealt with others when being questioned. "I don't want to be in Hufflepuff. They became the house where most half-bloods and suspected, weakly magical students are being put into. All of their futures lie in doing menial tasks for the truly magical. It became the synonym for being talentless." "Do you believe that?" she asked, surprising me with it. Yet her face remained calm and stoic when asking such a question. "Are you asking me if their house is what it is now or still what it was a decade ago?" I asked back with another question, finally making her flinch a little. "Hogwarts has been changed," I added, seeing her remain silent. "Perfected." "I remember him saying it," Quincy murmured, fixing her sitting position. To answer your question, I believe that we have much clearer roles for ourselves. Getting sorted into Ravenclaw wouldn't be bad. I continued in a leisurely voice, remembering what Father told me about the different houses in Hogwarts. I like the idea of being one who researches magic and explores new fields. Mm-hmm. She nodded but did not interrupt me. I won't be sorted into Gryffindor, I hope. Because… She opened her mouth to ask, and while she was searching for the correct words, I answered her. I knew what she was getting at. Those who go there are destined to be warriors and put into the front lines to battle and hunt down other wizards. I overheard my father a few times dealing with people who were put under the Imperious Curse and sent out to be suicide warriors to bring down foreign wizards who were against us. Foreign wizards? She asked, raising an eyebrow, and I grimaced, realizing I let it slip. Probably I should not know about it either, as I was talking about things I overheard. Father never told me about it. Look, I'm just saying that not only the terrorists are against us and our changes, I hurriedly added, watching her body squirm when I mentioned the terrorists. I was sure she thought about her father. Plus, I don't know how good I would be at dueling. I'm not fond of the idea. Your father is said to be one of the best. I read about his accomplishments in the war. Thank you. I smiled, feeling proud. But that does not mean I inherited his talent in it. I had never duelled before. I just got my wand. Really? She asked, surprised. I knew that it was considered late, but Father always said everything has its time. If I just got something and do not earn it, I would never come to appreciate it. I don't know if it is true, but since getting my wand, I couldn't part from it, and it is still hidden in my sleeve. With a flick of my hand, I could grasp it firmly. Yeah, anyway, that leaves me with one house. Slytherin. I see. She nodded, leaning back, but her face did not relax. Quite the opposite, she looked more nervous than before. What is it? I asked, and now it was me who leaned forward, looking at her, trying to see what she was thinking. Getting into any of the houses, other than Slytherin, would make my daily life a tad easier, but then I would be kicked out from home and consequently, probably from the school too. She explained, rubbing her forehead. Getting into Slytherin would make me avoid that fate. But then… I see. I sighed, not forcing her to explain it. Those in the main house of Hogwarts were destined to become either Death Eaters, close companions, servants of his. It would bring the prospect of great power, but for someone like Quincy, she would surely be looked down upon by the other, stronger pure-blood families who did not have two traitors and wanted terrorists in their midst. Would you like to buy anything? A voice interrupted us as an old woman opened the cabin door, pushing a trolley with more sweets on it than I ever counted at once. Yeah, I gulped, salivating at once. My hand was already in my pocket. In the end, because I just couldn't choose, I bought one from everything. While I was sorting them out on the seat next to me, Quincy politely refused and leaned back, fiddling with her long braid, looking out of the window and watching the passing scenery. She was only as good at hiding her emotions as I was, because I could tell she was nervous, anxious, and worried, all feeding into each other, making her mood worsen every mile we got closer to Hogwarts. Here! I pressed a chocolate frog towards her. I'm not hungry, she answered, looking a bit surprised. Do you really think I am a pig or something? Excuse me? She stuttered, her mouth opening agape, but I just grinned. You really think I can destroy all this by myself? Come on, help me out here, will ya? Come on, my hands are getting tired, I joked, still holding the chocolate frog that she took in the end, turning towards the pile of sweets in the process of deciding which one to eat next. Chapter 5. Sorting. At least the rest of the travelling went on smoothly, and none of us brought anything up that would upset the other. Our travel remained uninterrupted, although I expected someone to come and try to stir up trouble that he couldn't finish before. But that did not come to pass. When we were getting close, putting on our robes was an event in itself. It was a bit different from my usual ones, a bit more rougher, simpler, and less elegant. More uniform, which I kinda liked. It was an exciting change, although it did not have a correct slot to hide my wand in my sleeve. But I could work with that and modify it later on. For now, the inner pocket would suffice. Checking myself out in my faint reflection in the window, I was satisfied with what I saw. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Quincy asked, and it took me a second to realize what she meant. For a moment, I felt my face turn way brighter than I would like to admit. "It is," I answered, scratching my throat, changing my focus from my reflection onto the huge castle on the horizon, standing contrasted to the silvery moon and the star-filled night sky, painting a truly otherworldly picture. The best school to learn magic in Britain. Number in the world. Although I never visited any of the schools worthy of being mentioned alongside Hogwarts, I am pretty sure that most, if not all, modelled their structure after Hogwarts. Better to get ready. I looked away, glancing at Quincy's face. "We are going to be sorted in an hour or so. Good luck." I smiled at her, but I could see her anxiety come back with force. I could have said many things to her, but I think it would have been useless. All would be seen as nothing fake encouragement, as I was not in the same shoes as her. Which was true. I couldn't place myself in her place and accurately imagine what it was like to be looked down at constantly. Well, what I know about was what it feels like to be looked at provocatively. As soon as my feet landed on the platform, lit by orange gas lamps, I felt Draco's gaze land on me. Of course, I wasn't about to answer it in any way, shape, or form. Let him feel superior and let me focus on my own thing. That would be the best. "Do you have something going on with the Malfoy's kid?" Quincy asked, stepping down from the train behind me. "He has been looking at you from the start. Is it because of me?" "Nope," I answered. "To both of your questions. It's just that our families are kind of rivals. His father's tongue is browner than an American toad's back. My father at least has the decency to work for his achievements." "Ah!" She chuckled softly, which also made me smile. "I bet you wouldn't say that to his face." "Nope," I repeated myself, looking at her with one eye. "I'm not stupid. Plus, causing trouble for my father is the last thing I would want to do. In front of the kid, I'll be courteous." "You also are a kid. So am I," she said in a rather sharp voice, making me look at her, and I could not help but twitch my mouth. She wasn't wrong. And why did her voice then remind me of my mother? "Ugh!" "Please, no." "Humph." She walked past me, probably because of the grimace I let slip onto my face. Whatever." After huddling around like little ducklings, we were herded by a female teacher who we later learned was named Grubbly Plank. What a weird name. Well, I'm not one to speak anyway. The ride over the lake quickly made me forget about it anyway, and even Quincy, who shared the boat with me, managed to gaze in awe at the huge castle getting closer and closer and stopped ignoring me. What I could do without was the hundreds of stairs we had to ascend from the docks to the castle itself. "Are we being tested for our physical state or what?" I moaned under my breath, but Quincy was not about to answer me as I saw her gasp for air, holding her side, looking like she was in great pain, not an athletic type. I could tell that immediately. I could sympathize with that as if I hated something more than stairs. It was running. Luckily, there were not too many stairs left after coming into the school's main building and made to wait before the Great Hall. I was watching the tapestries, the different moving paintings and suits of armor, everything, just to not let my eyes meet with Draco's, or anyone else's, in fact. I wasn't in the mood for any of it, especially before we were properly sorted. It could backfire. "I see everyone is here," a voice echoed beside our ears, and the woman named Grubbly Plank answered shortly while a fat, short, balding, honestly speaking, rat-like figure appeared before us. For a moment, I thought I heard Squeaky. Then I saw her, only bloated out of proportions. It was Quincy's elbow that lodged itself into my side, wiping off the clear disgust from my face, replacing it with wincing. "If you look at him like that, you will be in trouble," she whispered. "He is the head of House Gryffindor, Professor Wormtail." "Professor? Him?" I asked back, even more surprised. Plus, head of a house. Merlin's beard. Is the school okay to employ someone like that? "Your face. Stop it. It's twitching." She warned me again while the squeaking blob of a guy was telling us something, but I could only hear rat-like noises and not any comprehensive words coming out of his mouth. Now I was sure I did not want to become part of Gryffindor. No way. Put me into Hufflepuff instead. "Disgusting," someone else whispered, and I knew that voice. It was Draco's. Well, sometimes even we can agree on something as I glanced at him, only nodding, making him flustered that we had the same opinion. Finally, when the rat man finished, we were led into the vast dining room. It was pretty uncomfortable to be watched by so many older students sitting at their respective tables, sizing us up. In front of us, at the professor's table, I could glance at the teachers who we would study under starting tomorrow. There was that grub whatever woman, and next to her was the empty space where our rat boy should be sitting at. There were many faces I did not recognize or know about, but there were some I knew. Besides the headmaster, Snape, I recognized another figure, Horace Slughorn. I knew about him because my father told me about how he and him somewhat connected. He was found by him personally and then invited to join the school as a teacher after Dumbledore was chased out. Supposedly he is close to him. Moving my eyes away from him, there was another man who I was very familiar with, especially because I saw him in my mother's bed. Gilderoy Lockhart. I just can't understand why father never taught him and mother a lesson when I told him about it. He even laughed. Then I found him reading one of that blonde playboy's books, having a jolly good time with it. Ha! I did not know I would find him here once again. Not that he knows about me at all, or I knew what he did with my mother. Watching that smile on his face was making my skin crawl. But then I saw another smile that made my stomach turn. It was plastered on a toad-like woman's face, wearing all pink. I don't know who she is, but I already know who I won't like at all simply by their first impressions. Before I could look around more, I heard my name being called out, and there was a stool placed in front of everyone with an old, dingy-looking hat placed on it. I didn't know how it got there. I was too preoccupied with my own thoughts, but I realized what was happening. The sorting started, and I was going to be sorted first. I can only hope that my face remained calm throughout while I walked out from the crowd to sit on that stool. As the hat was lowered on my head, strangely, the outside world completely disappeared. I could not hear or see anything. An ancient, tired voice echoed in my ear. It felt like coming from far afar, and it sounded so tired. I felt like listening to someone on death's bed. It was very, very uncomfortable. Another year has passed. No matter. The voice sighed, and I could feel deep lethargy oozing out of it. You have a good brain. You could easily fit into Ravenclaw. Oh boy. Here we go, I thought. But it seemed the hat, which the voice belonged to, I assume, chuckled. You also value familial ties and friendship. Hufflepuff would be a good home for you, but, I think if the hat wasn't covering half of my head, I should look totally white now to the other students. But not in our time, but in the past, he added, sounding even more tired and old. Gryffindor? No, you would not have fit in there. In the past, or right now? I asked, sounding curious and also a bit annoyed at the same time, which was a surprise for even me. Both. It answered and then spoke only one more word, which it did loudly, and I could feel it being lifted off of my head. Slytherin. Standing up, I was a bit dazed, looking around, hearing the claps coming from the table under the green and silver banners where I soon found my place, sitting down amongst older students, nodding at them. Looking at their features, I could notice many of them held characteristics of different, pure-blood families. Turning back towards the stool, I was watching the others be sorted. Some take more time than others, and some only put the hat on when it speaks out. One such girl was Quincy. When the sorting hat landed on her head, it cried Slytherin before it could cover her face. Surprisingly, few were clapping, me amongst them. Well, I looked around, catching some weird gazes. If you start something, you make sure to finish it, son. Echoed my father's words in my mind, so I just shrugged, continuing to clap while Quincy sat down next to me. Thanks, she whispered, barely audible. You're welcome, I answered calmly, lowering my hand and looking at her face that was finally regaining some colour, but she did not look at the others at all, focusing on the empty golden table before her. When it was Draco's time to sit, he was sorted into Slytherin too. No surprises there. Well, this time I only clapped for a brief moment, watching him come and sit with us. I see. He leaned closer to say something to Quincy or to me. I was not really sure, but I simply ignored him and nodded, hummed and answered with a dull, "Sure." Conrad, Quincy whispered while the sorting was going on, and her voice was masked by clapping as another girl was sorted into Ravenclaw. Did you even notice that you said yes to Draco about acknowledging his role as the leader of the first-year students? I did, I asked, raising an eyebrow and looking at Draco, who was already talking with two buffoon-looking guys. Oh well, no matter. He would want to be in the limelight anyway. Are you sure? She asked incredulously. Do you really belong to Slytherin? Who cares about a nameless position? I smiled at her, and I wasn't really lying. Let Draco be in the limelight. I can do my own thing more easily that way. Which is? She asked, lowering her voice even more, leaning closer. Study. Huh? She flinched, and I was sure she did not expect something so simple. Duh! We are at the best school. I don't care about pretending to be the leader of the kid army of Slytherin. There you go again. She rolled her eyes, getting annoyed at it, which, I won't lie, was amusing to see. Anyway, I want to learn all that there is in here and obtain true power, to raise above even my father so he will be proud of me, and I could support him with all I have got. Your father, she murmured, and I knew instantly she was thinking about hers, who I assume she had never met nor knew much about. if I do not count what was being said about him back home. I could guess, though. "Chin up!" I poked her sides, nodding towards the table before us, filled with hundreds of mouth-watering dishes. While we were whispering, the headmaster finished his brief speech that I completely missed. Not that I minded it. "Let's eat instead," I smiled, and seeing she agreed with me, I had the pleasure of having one of the best feasts I have ever had until that day. Chapter 6. First Day 1. With the feast finished, we were led by the prefect, a lanky, tall boy with black hair, down the many stairs heading towards the dungeon. It wasn't exactly what I would call promising. Looking at Quincy's face and a bit of nervousness creeping back onto it, I had a guess she thought we were being taken to some kind of cells or something for interrogation. Luckily, no torture chamber awaited us, but instead a windowless floor and a blank stone wall. "Purest form," the prefect said, and a stone snake slithered out from the ground, forming an archway and revealing a door for us that was there a moment ago. The passwords are always posted on the common room's notice board. It changes every fortnight, so don't forget to check it. If you bring anyone who is not part of our house to the common rooms, you will wish you were expelled, he said in a sadistic undertone, looking at us with a grin. Who would want to mingle with others when our house has the best? A voice I recognized belonging to Draco interjected, making the prefect smile even more widely. "There are exceptions," he said, glancing at Quincy but only lingering on her for a brief moment. Going through the door, looking around the rough stone walls, the round lamps hanging from the ceiling, burning with greenish flames, it was anything but cozy, making me sigh a little. This is not what I expected. The only positive feature I could say I liked was the panoramic window at the other end of the common room, letting us see into the huge lake. I knew we walked many steps going downstairs, but now I knew we were underground, under the lake's surface surrounding the castle. The tapestries on the walls were describing the adventures of famous medieval Slytherins, but to be honest, I was not really interested in it. My expectations of mine were maybe too big, but this common room was anything but fancy, anything that I would like. It was dark, cold, and oozing with uncomfortable feelings. Oh well, it isn't the end of the world. At least that is what I thought until I was led to my room, which I had to share with 3 others. And those were Draco and his 2 henchmen, who I assume he recruited on the train ride. I was wholly uninterested in their names, so when Draco introduced them, I only registered them as henchman number 1 and henchman number 2. I was not about to strain my brain with remembering unnecessary information when I had to keep it ready to learn all the spells we come across starting tomorrow. "Are you listening to me?" Draco asked while I was looking at them blankly. "Yes." I lied, of course, walking to the bed at one end of the room, opening my trunk and starting to organize my stuff around my own space. "I do hope so, or you can leave my room." "Okay," I replied, without turning towards him. I wish I could change places. Well, no matter. If he wants to make me leave, I would be happy to take up the gloves. Until then, it is best to let him to his own devices. When I was done, I simply closed the curtains around my space, giving me a little bit of privacy. The green-silver separators seemed to be enchanted because as soon as I pulled them close, all outside, noise ceased to invade my little room. Good. At least I can sleep like this. I chuckled, changing into my pajamas. Finally, I can start learning and call myself a real wizard soon enough. I met Quincy in the common room the next morning. I was surprised because I was the first to wake up in our room. Some older students were already up, sitting around the common room, of course, occupying the most comfortable chairs. "Morning?" I greeted her with a smile, but then raised one of my eyebrows, seeing the forming bags under her eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" "Kinda," she answered, trying to avoid the topic, standing before the bulletin board. "I'll get used to it." I was checking our first timetable. I followed her gaze, looking at it and taking a copy down for myself. "We start with the history of magic class. Doesn't that sound interesting?" "Depends on the teacher," she replied, but her voice wasn't really filled with much optimism. "True? Then double potions. Much better." "You know alchemy?" She looked at me, tilting her head to the sides. "Nope. Nothing. But it sounds practical, so—" "I am looking forward to that," I answered with a wide grin. "Then we are going to have charms in the afternoon. Not bad day if I say so myself." "On paper." "Are you always this pessimistic?" I sighed, pocketing the timetable and fixing my bag on my shoulder. "Sorry," she whispered, lowering her head, which made me feel a bit ashamed. "Nah, no worries." I nudged her, heading out of the common room. "Come, let's see if we can have breakfast already or not." At least the breakfast was plentiful and made me forget who I managed to get as roommates. Sitting down in the classroom where our first ever lesson was going to be held, I was still filled with expectations and ready to study. Yet when our teacher, surprisingly, a ghost floated in, I soon realized this was going to be anything but fun. If there is an image of boredom next to the word in the dictionary, I assume it would be an image of our classroom right now. Is our teacher, Professor Binns, determined to kill us with boredom? Or what? Father made me study many things back home to prepare me for attending Hogwarts, but he could make history or even math enjoyable. This was pure torture. Maybe this is a new form of the Cruciatus curse, and we are being experimented on? I should learn the imperious curse to mind control myself, to listen to his monotone, literally dead voice. "How can you listen to this?" I whispered, leaning towards Quincy, but then she just flinched, looking at me confused. "Sorry, what?" "Nothing." I smirked. Well, it seemed I was not alone. She is a pretty good pretender to feign that type of concentration. I thought she was drinking in every word the ghost of boredom was gurgling out. "Good job, Quincy. ... She now seemed a bit flustered and was blinking her eyes rapidly, forcing back a yawn. "Next time I will eat less before having a class with Binnsy here." "Binnsy?" she asked, looking around, needing a few moments before she realized who I meant. "Yeah, I get sleepy when I am full, and with this boring nonsense I feel it tenfold." "Ha. At least it isn't a double-length lesson." "It is your fault that you ate that much." "It looked great." "Let me concentrate," she added, getting annoyed and started ignoring me, slowly managing to fall back into her little trance, looking as if she was paying attention, but her eyes were almost empty. "Tsonk!" I clicked my tongue, impressed by her feat, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Leaning back and looking over my shoulder, I saw it was one of Draco's bedwarmers. What was his name? Crab? Crap? Crab. Crab, it should be. Henchman number 1. He was giving me a small piece of parchment that I took reluctantly, reading it slowly. "Keep being friendly with that misbegotten, and you will be labelled as such." Huh. I never knew he knew such archaic words. This would have shown some class if the rest of the sentences were similar. Well, at least he did not call her mongrel. As far as I know, Quincy is just as pure-blooded as me or him. Is he threatening me? I couldn't help but look back toward them, seeing him form a slight smirk. Then I looked at Quincy, who was surprisingly looking at me, which surprised me, I'm not going to lie. Dot, dot, dot. She remained silent, just glanced at the piece of parchment that she could not read, but could guess what was on it. Turning away from me, she looked forward again, returning to her trance, or it seemed to me. Dot, dot, dot now. It was my turn to remain silent as I thought about it. It would be good not to get into trouble so early, to go through my initial years with leisure until I topple my OWL. Ha! Father, I think I am not so good at remaining calm and indifferent as you. Sorry. I crumpled it up, put it into my pocket, and continued ignoring them behind us. When problems that I can't really deal with arrive, I can ignore them, at least until I come up with something that lets me deal with them once and for all. I would rather make friends with one who I can talk to as equals than play the role of a yes man. If it truly gets out of hand, Father did say I should trust the headmaster. Maybe they have something going I don't know about. If all hell breaks loose, I can go and ask for help. Maybe. We'll see. For now, my main goal is going to survive this torturous lesson. Chapter 7. First Day 2. Walking down steps coming out from Professor Binns's lesson was like taking a refreshing walk in the rain on a truly hot summer day. I felt my brain was turned into mush, a very dangerous spell as it needed nothing but the monotone ramblings of a ghost. No wand, no magic, just the power of words. This is not going to be my favourite, I said between two yawns, while many who were walking close by echoed with a yes and their own yawns. Could have been worse, Quincy added, slapping her cheeks with two hands, rubbing the sleepiness from her eyes as we arrived at the dungeons where our potions classes were going to take place. I hope Professor Slughorn is going to be much more lively. He should be, and even if not, we should act extra attentive. He is the head of Slytherin, another student added, who I didn't know at first. Looking at the gold ring on his finger with a stylized S, it has to be someone from the Selwyn family. He has been head of Slytherin House and been teaching here for 50 years. He was the mentor of him, he added with a whisper and collectively made everyone stop at the door to our classroom. Yeah, another girl added with a mosquito-like voice. Imagine what would happen if someone who is a mentor to him starts complaining about us. Somehow, by the time we all entered the potions classroom, we thought that another hour of Professor Binns's lesson wasn't a bad thing at all. When the professor, a bald, fat-bellied old man, walked in, we were all looking on silently. How was he going to act? Was he friendly, or was the mentor of him just as, well, persuasive as his protégé? He looked at us and our white faces with surprise. I stole a quick glance at Draco, who I assume felt the same as his face was free of the usual smug smile that often accompanied him. What is the long face for? Did someone die? Professor Slughorn asked us, which was not the best choice of words, as I exchanged a grim look with Quincy, with who I shared my desk. Oh boy, someone did? Already? The professor gasped, checking us individually and making a head count. When he was nearing me, I tried to hide behind my cauldron, but of course, it was a futile effort. Oh, you are all here? Then nobody died. It would have been weird. Most accidents happen in the dark arts lessons. You don't have that until second year. People die? Draco asked, unable to hold back, and for a moment I was glad because I had the same question in mind. Accidents do happen from time to time. Mind you, it is not that usual, Professor Slughorn tried to say, seeing our pale white faces. None of my Slytherins died in the past 10 years. The first few years when the Defense Against the Dark Arts was renamed and reorganized. There were some accidents. But as we learned and adapted, all became much more streamlined and safer. "Trust me," he said in a jovial mood, trying to lift our spirits. "It seems he is not like what I expected." I whispered to Quincy, who nodded with a bit of relief creeping up on her face too. "Well, you don't need to worry. Your first year is going to be dark arts. The basics with Professor Lockhart. He couldn't hurt you even if he wanted to." He chuckled, which was also not wholly relieving, but at least I got the feeling we won't have any problems with Professor Slughorn. "Well, well," he clapped, looking at us smilingly. "This year I am going to introduce you to the world of potion making. I prefer teaching through practical lessons. The books you have for this year have everything you need. Of course, if you want to brew the perfect version of said potions, you need more than the following recipes. Potions are like living beings. You must read them while concocting them. The recipe may describe how to create them, but their potential is determined by the quality of the ingredients. The book may say you have to stir it clockwise 4 times, but your ingredients were subpar, making you stir it 8 times to produce the potion you were aiming for. We will see how you fare and if you have what it takes to be a master potion maker. Now, this is more like a lesson I was hoping for," I whispered to Quincy. "This is what I expected from the start." The professor waved his hand, holding his wand, and the white chalk on his desk flew up behind him, writing hastily onto the blackboard. "Here are the ingredients for it," Professor Slughorn said, looking at us while we read the words appearing behind him. "Rat tails, porcupine quilly, and billywig stings." I read softly. It wasn't much, but he did not write up the amount or the order to put it in. How to stir, the temperature of the fire. "Yes." He smiled when our eyes met. "It is not a hard potion to make. Perfect for starting out. But," he looked at us with an expectant look, "I won't give you more idea on what it is. I want to test you all, to see who has the gift to be a master. You have 1.5 hours to determine which potion you should make. The correct recipe and the last missing ingredient are in your books." "Oh!" I exclaimed, knowing there wasn't all, and he was testing us. Good. Good. Now this is truly like a lesson I can get behind. Awesome. No helping the others. Everyone must work alone. If you do, I am going to deduct points for it. Good luck. The professor clapped, sitting back behind his table and watching us get to work. Looking around, I saw some of the others hit up the book we had, trying to find the correct recipe. Well, good luck. It was at least 400 pages long and had tons of recipes. By the time they find it, the lesson will be over. Okay, let's tackle this from a practical standpoint. With that, I stood up, drawing everyone's attention, and simply walked to the shelf where the ingredients were on display and took what I needed, going back to my place. Here. I gave some to Quincy, who was still looking at the blackboard, drawing her back from her weird stupor. Thanks, she murmured, looking at my hand while I placed it before her. If I have known some spells, I could charm the book to open where I need it to. I grumbled under my breath as I sat down, and I heard Quincy whisper, her mouth barely moving or twitching, trying to avoid the professor's gaze. It's the hair-raising potion, she said, looking as if she was fixing her clothes, and then started to flip through her book. I tried to make my indifferent look as always, looking around the rest before I followed suit, trying to act as if I was looking for the correct recipe. It was hard to hold back my grin, especially as I looked at the slightly worried face of Draco at the opposite table, frantically flipping through the potion recipes. When Quincy stood up, firing up her cauldron, everyone turned to look at her, especially Professor Slughorn. I was still trying to hold back the smile from creeping up to my face. It was good for gaining a little bit of credit to her name. I guessed by the look on her face that in the morning she was not really let to sleep well. I don't know who her roommates are, but I assume she wasn't welcomed with open arms. Seeing her start cutting the ingredients, it was my time to follow suit. Looking into the index page, I found the recipe. Flipping to it and reading it, I realized there is no fourth ingredient. Sly, Professor Slughorn, very sly. The addition of the ingredients didn't matter either, only their quantity. They had to be balanced and match each other ideally to create a perfect hair-raising potion. After reading the instructions, I stood up, copied Quincy, and started to prepare my very first brewing session. It would be an understatement if I said I was not nervous. I never made a potion myself in my life. I watched Father concoct some, but those were all mediocre stuff, as he was not a good potion maker. Still, at least I know how to handle ingredients and how to prepare my cauldron. Now the eyes that were watching us doubled, filled with part jealousy and part hate, mixed in with a bit of panic. It was at that moment when Draco also looked at me. I saw that his face was whiter than usual, and his eyes were accusatory. That is when I slowly parted my lips, and when the professor's eyes wandered away, I mouthed the potion's name. I almost laughed at the face he made, not believing what I had done, as to why. I want peace while attending school. I am not here to vie for the attention of others. I want to learn magic to achieve that. I need to be left alone to my own devices. I wanted to ensure Draco won't seek me out with every little thing, or try to provoke me into useless, idiotic duels or whatever he was planning. It was worth it. By the time I started cutting my ingredients, Draco was also standing, preparing his cauldron, and so did his cronies a few moments later. It didn't take long for the classroom to be filled with the noise of knives hitting the cutting board and the sound of small bits being thrown into the water, followed by the paddles hitting the cauldron's edge as students were stirring them. All the way to the remaining class, Quincy was wholly focused on it, standing next to me. She didn't say anything, only worked on her potion, and as we entered the last half an hour, her cauldron was releasing greenish, glittering smoke that raised some of her hair as it wafted out. Looking at her cauldron, I saw her brew was a lively green in colour, while mine was much duller. Oh well, it should be good enough, I hope. When the professor stood up again, there were some who were on the verge of tears because they either failed to even start or were only in the middle of brewing their potions. Very good, very good. He walked before Quincy and me, and he was looking into her cauldron. This is almost perfect. Wonderful. He smiled happily while I watched his fat belly jiggle around, afraid he would knock over our cauldrons. What is your name, miss? Quincy Black. She answered, her face turning bright red from the praise. Outstanding, Miss Black. 10 points for Slytherin, he announced with a truly cheerful voice, and then turned towards mine. Also good. The quality of the ingredients was not on par with each other. You should have balanced it out by adding less rat tail and increasing the amount of billowing. He advised, but his voice was now much less appreciative and more factual. Not rude per se, but not kind either. Honestly, I did not mind. Without Quincy's help, I would still be fumbling around, so I get it. I had a feeling he noticed it, but let it slide. Probably another test for us. That is why he did not ask for my name, and neither did he ask for the others after us. Watching him go to each of our ends and explain our wrongdoings with the same kind yet distant voice was enough for me to know he was only happy with Quincy's performance. Nice job. I leaned over, whispering to her, I owe you one. Thanks, she murmured, still flushed, her face basking in more of a pink colour than anything. Lunch afterward? She answered simultaneously as her stomach rumbled a little, turning her crimson from pink. Ahaha, see, that is why I had a plentiful breakfast. I chuckled, looking back at my cauldron, letting Quincy relax and stopping my teasings. Finally, this lesson was much more like it. Now my expectations were extra high for the charms lesson. The only thing that made me weary was the fact that Umbridge Woman was going to hold it, and her aura was anything but friendly. Chapter 8. Lunchtime Exploration. The lunch was great, and after filling our stomachs we still had around an hour to laze around before our charms class began. To not let ourselves be overwhelmed by the food coma both Quincy and I was starting to feel, we decided the best solution was to explore the castle a little. That was when we ran into him. Into it. Ooh, what is this? A youngling sneaking off, searching for a place for smoochy smoochy. What a naughty, GHTI boy and girl you are. What? I asked, wholly bewildered, failing to notice that Quincy next to me was frozen in place, turning redder than the tomato on our plates a few minutes ago. I never saw such a tangible ghost before. No. This was not a ghost. A poltergeist. Oh, pretending to not know? Tsk, tsk, tsk. He wiggled a finger at me while I was watching its strange, blazing eyes and the weird, jester-like clothes and hat it was wearing. Who are you? I asked, baffled at the scenery and his annoyingly pitched voice. Peeves won't tell you. It laughed, throwing a water balloon, from nowhere, straight into my face, soaking my head to toe. Peeves, I murmured, wiping my face and turning a shade grimmer. Quincy was quickly stepping away, trying not to get wet as a second one landed on my head. Ooh, not that stupid, are you? Oh ho 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 ho! Missy does not want more kissy kissy? Oh ho ho ho! Is it time for a break-up already? It chortled, flying above us in circles. Now I remembered. Father did tell me about him. The eternal pain of many students and caretakers. Peeves the poltergeist, a being that has been part of Hogwarts since its inception. Nobody knows how he came to be, but many think he is a manifestation of all the past and present students' collective mischiefs. Whatever he was, in reality, I knew that it was best if we ran for it. As first-year students, we were not in any position to fight him. I grabbed Quincy's hand from nowhere and took for the stairs, hearing him laugh behind us. Oh ho ho ho, holding hands, running away to be naughty naughty. That is against the rules. Peeves is going to tell on you. Ah ha ha ha. I was not about to be caught by a poltergeist, and I was especially not keen to be questioned by others because some idiotic ghost thought it was fun to spread baseless lies. I didn't even look where I was going. I just held Quincy's hand, going up the stairs right until I wasn't hearing that bastard's laugh. When we stopped and I turned around, I was greeted with Quincy's completely red face and sweating forehead as she was gasping for air. Ah, sorry, I stuttered, letting her hand go, which she immediately pulled away, holding her sides. Her face contorted with pain, groaning between rapid breaths. You are not fan of athletic things, huh? I asked, with a forced grin as I was also pretty out of breath, finally realizing we climbed at least, 5 or 6 floors? Quincy didn't say anything, just looked at me briefly before turning away. I guess she wanted to say something, but her thirst for air was so big that she couldn't form words. So she leaned against the stone wall, trying to remain standing with her weak knees. Well, it is best this way. I now realize what that thing was. It is not good to run into him, He is chaos incarnate. Peeves? She finally managed to speak, her voice still trembling. I read about him. Yeah, I moaned, stretching my back, removing my robe and squeezing the water out. Damn, I need to learn some spells to dry myself, I added, ruffling my wet hair before combing it backward and looking around. Where are we? We are... She looked around, the redness slowly receding from her face. I think we are the North Tower. North Tower? I glanced around, but besides the stone walls, the spiral staircase, windows and some wooden railings, I couldn't tell where we were at all. Are you also a map expert besides being a potion master? No, she answered, looking at me, part annoyed, part happy, which gave a unique expression to her. I just read all about Hogwarts in the many books related to its history, especially because half of them was banned. Maybe I should have done the same, I added, seeing the wisdom in it. Father has a pretty extensive library back home. Well, it doesn't matter anymore. So, why does this place look like nobody came here for years? I asked, looking at the dusty ladder steps mounted on the walls and following them upwards. I also managed to notice a trapdoor there, because this was the old divination classroom. Quincy finished, following my gaze. Since divination has been outlawed, this classroom is out of order. Want to check it out? I asked, grinning, looking at her, and after a brief hesitation, she nodded, wearing a small but excited smile. By the time I reached the topmost notch and pushed the trapdoor open with my free hand, I felt the decade-long dust sticking to my wet palms. I coughed as the dust on the other side whipped out, hitting me straight in the face. Damn, Watch when you come up, okay? I shouted down while climbing up completely. Oh, okay. I heard her weak answer coming after me. Inside the room, it was hard to breathe. The air was stuffy and old, no, ancient. As soon as I glanced at the red curtains, I pulled them off and opened all the windows that there was to let in some fresh air. Ugh. This is nasty, Quincy added, holding her nose as she climbed up, watching the dust-filled circular tables, the faded cushions and chairs, and the many spiderweb-laced books and trinkets on the wall-mounted shelves. Yeah. I don't think anybody has come up here in more than a decade. Ah? I watched on with surprise as Quincy pulled out her wand. I am no Ollivander, so I couldn't really tell what kind of wand it was, but it had a spiral-like form and was a warm, chestnut colour. Scourgify! She shouted, and the dust was swept out of the open windows in a blink of an eye, and the air was refreshed. Then she looked at me, repeating the same, and I was cleaned up, no longer looking like someone had poured grey flour on my head. Thanks, I grinned. That is a pretty good spell. Care to teach me? She flinched, getting a bit embarrassed. Well, I could. It is not hard and useful for cleaning and all that. Thanks. I nodded at her before looking around once more. Hey, what do you think? Could this be our little secret base? Huh? She asked back simply, blinking her eyes rapidly, following me as I checked the shelves. Do you think we will get any real rest or peace of mind? I asked calmly without looking back at her, my eyes reading the many strange books stored in here. Even if half the people won't believe Peeves, if he goes spinning his little lies, many could use it as ammunition against you or me. But it isn't true, she protested loudly, stomping in place. You shouldn't have pulled me away. Yeah, you should have explained yourself to the others plainly. I shrugged, knowing she wasn't really liked by the rest of Slytherin. That was obvious since our train ride. One day was enough for me to measure her popularity by looking at the others at the sorting ceremony. With that, she fell silent, looking away from me, biting into her lips, which seemed especially painful. "Well, at least you would have been spared," she murmured, and I pretended not to hear that. "So, what do you say? Seeing that nobody is coming here, it would be the perfect retreat if we need some quiet. After we learn some charms, we could also make it so nobody can come in, huh?" "That does sound nice," she murmured, clearly on board with my idea. "Isn't it?" I smiled, watching the room that, now, after being cleaned up, looked much more welcoming than before. Having a secret base for ourselves could come in handy, especially if I want to plan things out and not be bothered by the others in the common room, like coming up with a way where I can pay back that annoying poltergeist somehow. Chapter 9. Charming. 10 minutes later, all the tables were pushed to the end of the room, making enough space for us and for the soft cushions we hoarded into the middle to serve as the most relaxing place to sit. "Ah, this is nice," I sighed, feeling thoroughly relaxed and slightly sleepy. "This is going to be great in the winter too, as we have a fireplace." I pointed at it. "It is much more cozier than the dungeon." Quincy agreed, also enjoying the peace and the warm sunlight pouring in from the open windows. "For sure. I don't get what it is with the fascination of living in a literal dungeon. 1,000 years have passed, and even then. Ha. Now I really think Ravenclaw would have been a better choice." "Huh. Don't let the others hear this." She giggled, lying next to me. "I won't. I am going to make sure I will be left to my own devices." "That is why you helped out Draco." "Yep." I looked at her. "You saw?" "Of course," she answered, but she wasn't mad about it. "I am not stupid." "Nobody said you were. You just did not hear them saying it." She shrugged, turning towards the window, watching the blue sky. "Well, I tried preparing for it. No matter. I will deal with it. If nothing, I just need to endure it for a year or two." "Oh? What do you mean?" "Until I learn enough to defend myself. I'll remember everyone," she added whisperingly. "Well, Father did say some girls are dangerous, but Mother is not one of those. He told me that I should be afraid of those who can endure and remain silent when others are already screaming. Those witches are the ones who I have to be wary of." "Well, good luck, I guess." "Huh." She grinned a little. "Thanks. If you want to practice, I have an idea." "What do you mean?" she asked, sitting up, turning towards me with a curious look in her brown eyes. Peeves was annoying, and I want to do something about it. "Was he now?" she asked, looking and sounding a bit sour. "Well, if you don't mind the rumours spread, I don't really care, but from the two of us, guess who would be the one to be picked on more? ... At that, the sourness on her face increased significantly. "Exactly. So, what I wanted to say, I want to think about something to do about him." "You can't kill something that is not really alive," she added after shaking her head, calming down a little. "I was not hoping for that. I would like to make him be gone for real, but I know enough to realize that would be impossible. But I am sure some things can hurt him. Or how would the teachers keep him in check?" That is true. It do sounds like a valid idea. Plus, I am not in a hurry. I will visit the library after the afternoon class anyway. See what we can borrow. Already? She chuckled, shaking her head. Are you an eager beaver? I just want to learn magic. That is all, I answered, truly enjoying our break before heading to our first charms class, and did not even know how much we needed that short rest. We were still in a pretty good mood when Professor Umbridge entered the classroom. It seemed like Peeves failed to spread any kind of rumours, probably distracted by others or some better prank he could pull on someone. But when she opened her mouth on her toad-like head, I felt the smile fading from my face. Welcome, children, to my class. You ought to know that I demand order from my pupils at all times. You may be young, but you are the next generation of wizards and witches who will serve his will and advance our kind. Being part of his house, being a Slytherin, makes you not just responsible for showing the others how it is done, but also puts a great weight on your shoulders to act as true pureblood should at all times. As she was saying it, her eyes slowly fell onto Quincy and then wandered towards me. From that moment on, she did not blink or move it away. Mr. Anguin! Sneaking off to fool around on your first day here is already a sign of a rotten core. Maybe you are attracted to rotten wood, being hollow inside yourself, but it is not something I will tolerate. What? I asked, but only inside my head. Luckily, I managed to stop my mouth from opening and letting my thoughts to the surface. Or more precisely, I was so stunned I forgot to do so. On the outside, I felt my eyebrows raising, looking at her questioningly, which I knew was a wrong move because she immediately continued. Mr. Anguin, I think you need a lesson to realize this is not the house of Anguin, and the snake on your uniform's emblem is not a viper. Minus 50 points from Slytherin. What? I stood up, and now I knew that the words were not held back, but shouted out as loud as I could manage, fighting my shock to not fall back into my chair immediately. As soon as my words echoed out, the others also repeated it, many exclaiming the same way, calling for injustice and saying that I should be sent to detention instead. Which I agreed. Finished? Professor Umbridge asked, smiling, fixing the pink costume she was wearing. You all are better to learn that there are rules in this school, rules that I helped write. I suggest you all read it in your free time. That is unfair nonetheless, I said, my voice overshooting the others' complaints. Is it? She asked, forming a broader, somewhat sadistic smile. It is? I nodded, looking directly into her eyes, while the others slowly fell silent. If I make a mistake, why punish the others? Oh. I didn't know you wore crimson and gold. She chuckled and looked like she was thinking about something, but I could see and feel she already knew what she would do very well. Plus, I don't think listening to Peeves is something that would hold up in court, I added, making many of my classmates look at me. A quick glance already told me that half of them didn't know what I was talking about, but hearing the name, the other half had a faint inkling of what this was about. Feeling smart now? Professor Umbridge smiled, her voice kind, but I felt my skin crawl listening to her voice. Very well. Very well. We can change the punishment. If you accept my punishment right here and now, I won't deduct points from Slytherin. Okay, I answered immediately. This was the best case scenario. On the one hand, nobody would pay attention to Peeves' rumours. The others, including the older students in our house, wouldn't want to skin me and Quincy alive. And maybe I could score some positive points with the others. I think my father would be proud of me, how I turned something nasty into a favourable. But I couldn't think any further. I only saw her pull out her wand and point at me, and next came the unbelievable pain from every part of my body. I never heard her cry the spell's name, but I knew that it was Cruciatus Curse. Nothing else could make me feel such indescribable pain. I could not think, speak, or do anything, as all the muscles in my body stiffened and contracted, while I felt like I was pushed into boiling oil while being stabbed with millions of needles at the same time. I don't know how long it went or what happened afterward. As soon as Professor Umbridge stopped the spell, my mind turned itself off, and I collapsed. When I came to reality, it was dark all around me. My first thought was that I had died. But then I recognized the ceiling. It was the dormitory's ceiling. Turning my head, I felt no pain in my body, yet my brain remembered it, making me wince uncontrollably. Sitting up, I was still wearing my uniform, lying on my bed with the curtains closed around it. Judging by the darkness, it had to be night already. She didn't even hesitate, I whispered, looking down at my hand, which I saw trembling. I was afraid. My first thought was to write to my father, let him know about it, but what then? Even if he does something, I bet he would have no power to move that vile woman from her position. It would only create trouble for him. Besides, this was his school. He appointed the teachers, all of them. Fuck! I cursed, letting out a word that I would be greatly punished back home, acting like someone with mixed blood, like my mother and her branch. Tsk. I could do nothing but bite my lips, clench my fist, and force myself to stop trembling. I couldn't let fear control me, and I had to calm down and think it through. Just as father always taught me. A cool head is what you need. He won so many duels not because he was the best, but because he knew how to stay focused under pressure. After my hand finally stopped trembling, I looked at my nightstand, where my wand was lying. I do not remember taking it out, but it probably fell out of my pocket when I fell over. I will need to modify my cloak a little so it will always be ready and at hand. The next time someone tries to cast a curse on me, I have to act faster. Although, learning defensive and offensive spells would help too. Ah! I sighed loudly, standing up, fixing my clothes as best as I could to open the curtains and sneak out. I was starving. I knew it was already late, but maybe I could find something to snack on in the common room. It was worth a shot. What I did not expect was that when I pulled the curtains over, one of my roommates, namely Draco Malfoy, was still up, reading something on his bed. The moment I appeared, he looked at me, and I was surprised at the calm gaze he gave me. If I didn't know him, I would think he was looking to be a bit friendly, even. "Hey," I said, not really knowing what to say and finding the situation really awkward. "Hey," he nodded back. "You owe me for carrying your unconscious body back here." "Thanks," I murmured, looking away and letting out another sigh. "Sure," he said, sounding indifferent, turning back to the book he was reading while I decided it was best to just go. Yet when I reached the door to our room, he called after me. "That was something," he added, faltering a little, unable to bring himself to really compliment me. Not that I was expecting it anyway. "Yeah, it was," I groaned. Just remembering how it felt, I wanted to faint once more. Many say the killing curse is the worst, but at least it instantly finishes you. This question mark. This was something I wished to never experience again. Chapter 10, Dark Arts 1. The common room was empty, and the only light came from the embers in the fireplace, left behind by the fire burning in it previously. Glancing at the clock above it, I finally realized it just passed midnight. "Conrad," a voice called me, and turning towards it, I noticed that Quincy was sitting at one of the tables in the back, stretching. It was evident she was woken up by my arrival, as she was sleeping in a chair, which looked highly uncomfortable to do. Evening, I whispered, coming up to her. What are you doing here this late? I should be the one asking that. She moaned, rubbing her eyes, sitting up, and stifling another yawn. Are you okay? Yeah. I nodded, smiling a little to hide the fact that the mere thought of how it felt made me wince. That spell does not injure or kill. I know, but… She looked at me, trying to see if I was telling the truth or not. I'm fine, honest, hungry, but otherwise all good. I guessed so. She stood up, rummaging a little in the bag, sitting next to her, and picking out wrapped-up sandwiches. I sneaked out some food from dinner and made some sandwiches out of them. Awesome! Thanks! I grinned, sitting down and wolfing them down. After the first bite, I finally realized how starved I felt, and I couldn't say anything until both of them were gone. Ha! You are a lifesaver! I was about to sneak out to get some food! No! She said, almost yelling, before grabbing at her mouth and looking around worriedly. Don't even think about that, she whispered, leaning close. Huh? What? Why? After you fainted, Professor Umbridge told us that all those who are caught breaking the rules will receive the same punishment. Depending on the severity, we are going to be put through multiple rounds of that horrible curse. She said you are lucky that we are new here. An older student would have been tortured much longer. Psycho bitch! And the others let her do it? She is responsible for maintaining order on school grounds, Quincy added, looking around once more as if someone would spy on us this late. She only teaches charms for first-year students. From next year onward, she is going to be our dark arts teacher. Really? I asked, my face getting pretty gloomy pretty fast. What about our current one? I asked, refusing to say that idiot's name. Every time I read it on the spine of his books, I am reminded of seeing him with my mother. Professor Lockhart? She asked, sounding a bit excited and then quickly turning, disappointed. Sadly, his expertise is only being utilized in the first year to teach us proper self-defense and prepare us for what awaits us starting next year. After that, they switch subjects. Wait, he has expertise? Besides gloating. Huh? She looked at me weirdly and she furrowed her brows in a way. I felt as if I had just insulted her mother or something. He is a well-known duelist. He captured many members of that Phoenix terrorist group. Before that, he was a famed monster hunter. Yeah, sure he was, I scoffed, further elevating Quincy's dissatisfaction. Father read his books and told me that he was present more than 70% of those events. And he was not. Then why would he write about it? She asked back, crossing her arms before her chest and puffing out her cheeks. Her reaction greatly surprised me. But I guess she was a fan. Well, too bad I wasn't going to hold back on that jackass. Father says he is a promotional piece, a propaganda piece, or something like that. Father this, father that. You are always on about him. She harumphed, standing up and fixing her wrinkly clothes. I'm going to sleep. And with that, she was gone. Ha! Oh well, we will see that tomorrow, I moaned, also standing up, feeling tired now that my stomach was full, heading to bed so I could be fresh for our first dark arts lesson tomorrow morning. Waking up the next morning was more challenging than I expected. If I could, I would stay in bed, but I bet that would warrant some kind of punishment again. And I am not in the mood to have seconds right after yesterday. After dressing up and pulling my curtains sideways, I came face to face with Draco, who was just about to leave too. Hey, he said after I nodded at him. About yesterday, you better watch out. I tilted my head, furrowing my brows. Was he warning or threatening me? What you did was good. Nobody is angry at you. But that girlfriend of yours means trouble. The blacks are already marked as bad blood. Bad blood. Even though they were part of the most ancient of bloodlines, in just a century, many of their direct descendants turned into terrorists. One more mistake and they would be done in, just like the Weasleys. I remember Father telling me about it, as it was he who was sent to deal with them, right around the time I was born and when Dumbledore was turned into a fugitive. I warn you because I don't want to owe you for yesterday, he continued coolly. I don't care if you want to fool around with her, but the others will start looking at you funny soon enough. And you won't? I asked, smiling. I may, but that depends if you show yourself useful or not. Yeah. I rolled my eyes. Don't forget that I am also from an equally good bloodline. Only half right. Draco shot back quickly. Your mother is not wholly clear, unlike mine. That is true. I nodded, tilting my head, and I saw the surprise on his face. He was not expecting me to agree, but to shoot back or start an argument over it. But yours have some black in yours, no? I think you may be closer to them than I am. Humph, he snorted decisively. Watch your mouth. Can't, I'm not that cross-eyed, I answered with a simple shrug, leaving our dorm, cutting it short before it would genuinely escalate into something. Not that I said anything wrong. I think no pure blood family is unrelated in some way, shape or form. I met Quincy in the Great Hall, but she was not in a better mood throughout the breakfast. Oh well, if she doesn't want to speak, so be it. I focused on the food before me instead, sometimes replying to some of the other Slytherins coming over and saying some friendly words, introducing themselves or just nodding at me. It seemed what I did yesterday spread, and I made myself stand out a little. Which was bad. That was the last thing that I wanted. Well, not that I can change the past anymore. Plus, it is better than being hated because I just lost 50 points for the house right on the first day. I don't think I could have survived that, especially if the older students visited me with their wands ready. Heading to the classroom, Quincy didn't say a word to me, although she did keep up with me, which was surprising. Now I was interested as to how long she would keep ignoring me. A day, 2 days, a week. Sitting down in the classroom, she only looked at me, telling me with her eyes, "You will see how wrong you are. Just wait." Well, I did not have to wait for long. The room itself was like any other classroom, with the only difference being that the walls were decorated with images of magical beasts, all belonging to dangerous and deadly creatures. I was just about to examine them one by one when Professor Lockhart arrived. He was wearing an expensive blue robe, smiling from ear to ear while fixing his blonde hair, looking at us expectantly. I tried to remain calm and indifferent, watching him walk before us, clapping happily. Welcome, welcome. It is such a great event every year when I see new, eager young faces come to my class. The only time he can parade himself as a professional, I heard a voice whisper, and Quincy and I looked back simultaneously at Draco sitting behind us. While Quincy was frowning, saying nothing, and turning forward, I just formed a small smile, nodding at him. It seemed it wasn't just me who saw through that fake flair he was putting on. In your first year, I am tasked to prepare you guys and gals for the real deal. Professor Lockhart continued. It is the most important task of any teacher in Hogwarts because if not for me, you may have some unfortunate accidents later on. We don't want that, do we? Ha 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 ha. While he spoke in his smug, self-important voice, I couldn't help but retch a little. Sadly, I seemed to be alone in my disgust, as watching the others, especially the girls, were already head over heels before him. I had to give it to him. He knew how to work his tongue. This year, we are going to learn many practical skills, mostly centering around dueling. He blabbered on, finally catching my attention. My classes will be most practical to prepare you all for Professor Umbridge's dark arts lessons. He finished his speech, but his smile was not truly honest after mentioning her name. Just then, I realized that many were looking at me, and my hand was shaking a little, and I had to hold my wrist from showing it. Damn it! I need to get it together. This can't affect me like this. Now! Professor Lockhart clapped, watching us back in his jovial mood. As our first lesson, we are going to practice the Expelliarmus charm on each other. You should have learned it yesterday in your charms class, yes? Now, I was sure everyone was looking at me as I was out cold. Did we learn that? Well, great. I missed it. This is getting better and better. Did something happen? He asked, sounding a bit unsure, also looking at me, following the others' gazes. I missed yesterday's charms class. I answered with a sigh. I was punished. Oh, he said, and it looked as if he flinched a little, hearing the word punished. Well, no worries. Class, pair up while I quickly teach our little rascal here how to do the charm, and we will start exercising. He laughed loudly, waving me over. Whoa. Was I mistaken? Was he truly a good guy? Maybe it was my mother who started it all and not Professor Lockhart. That wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. Hurrying forward, I looked at him expectantly. The fact that I missed learning my first spell was a big blow. I was eager to catch up. Worry not, kiddo, he laughed, slapping my back. The Expelliarmus charm is so easy. Even I can do it. I mean, I can even do it without a wand. Aha! He added quickly, tilting his head left and right like some kind of weird pigeon. You got into your trouble, huh? I think I heard about it. He leaned forward, switching to whispers, elbowing me gently. Little Casanova, if you want, I can give you tips later on. I have not just great experience in catching and killing wanted terrorists, but also abundant experience in catching the eyes of girls, married or not. Aha. Thanks, I answered, my voice sounding flustered, but I was just trying to hold back my anger. Nope. It was not only my mother who was in the wrong. This jackass for sure tried wooing her. She just let it happen easily, cursed them, both of them. Humph. Now, let me show you. He straightened his back, teaching me the spell and showing me the wand movement it required. But even if I copied his moves down to the last-minute details, it just wouldn't come out correctly. Was I talentless? For a moment I was scared, especially after hearing the others had already started casting it at each other. Glancing over, catching a glimpse of Draco's spell, disarming both of his followers in quick succession, made my jaw drop. But not because of his proficiency, but because this idiot of a professor of mine reversed the movement of his wrist while showing it to me. I was doing it wrong. Of course, it wouldn't come off as it should. Expelliarmus! I performed it, aiming at him, and because he was so distracted by monologuing something I was not paying attention to, his wand flew out of his loose grip and out of the open window. Ah! He fell silent, and many others too, seeing what happened. I think I get the gist of it, Professor, I answered with a stupid smile, looking at him innocently, hoping this wouldn't land me in detention. Ah ha ha. Very good, young lad. Very good. Now, don't get yourself fired up just yet. I was letting you practice it on me to get a good feeling for it. This wouldn't have happened in a real life and death situation. I'll go, get my wand back. You guys continue as you were. He beamed at us, hurrying out of the classroom, leaving us there unsupervised. Well, I said, looking at Draco first before glancing at Quincy, who was standing there without a pair to train with. I just disarmed a professional terrorist hunter. When he gets back, I hope he gives our house at least 10 points for that.